Sexual misconduct allegations had been made against the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Polls had shown that whether his denials of the accusations were believed was not based upon the facts of the case or even gender. The biggest factor influencing whether people believed him was political party affiliation. Let's take a deeper look. Welcome to PA Voter Information Network. This is Larry DeMarco, your host. Are you anxious about this upcoming election season? Well, I have a cure. Just click the subscription button on my YouTube channel and all your opponents are guaranteed bad luck. In the previous episode, we discussed the power of the protester. In this episode, we will look at the blind faith our governmental system places in partisan politics rather than in any quest for the truth. 3 women had accused Judge Kavanaugh, and the first, Christine Blasey Ford, was the only one to have testified.
She said that the teens, including herself, were drinking at the party, and that Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge were stumbling drunk. Ford said Judge and Kavanaugh corralled her in a bedroom, and that Kavanaugh pinned her on a bed, groped her over her clothes, and attempted to pull off her swimsuit.
She escaped the assault when Judge Kavanaugh's friend jumped on the bed, but she never reported the incident and didn't tell anyone until a therapy session in 2012. The second incident involved Deborah Ramirez in an account published by The New Yorker on September 23rd.
She and Kavanaugh were undergraduate students at Yale University during the 1983-1984 school year. Ramirez said Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a dorm party where both of them had been drinking.
The third accuser was Julie Swetnick.
Swetnick alleged that Kavanaugh, Judge, and others tried to spike the punch at house parties they attended in order to target girls. She said she remembers Kavanaugh and Judge waiting in line for their turn to rape inebriated or disoriented women. Swetnick said she was incapacitated and raped at one of the parties where Kavanaugh and Judge were present in approximately 1982.
Kavanaugh denied all 3 incidents. Republican women weighed in on the incident.
A show of hands, how many of you believe Judge Kavanaugh when he says this didn't happen?
But in the grand scheme of things, my goodness, there was no intercourse. There was maybe a touch.
Right.
Can we really? 36 years later, she's still stuck on that? Had it happened?
I mean, we're talking about a 15-year-old girl, which I respect. You know, I'm a woman, I respect. And we're talking about a 17-year-old boy in high school with testosterone running high. Tell me what boy hasn't done this in high school. Please, I would like to know.
As women, though, do you have some sympathy for her, for what she's going through?
No, I have no sympathy.
But partisan politics completely determine who the parties believe. Republicans believe Kavanaugh 61% or 57% man or woman, versus 5 or 6% believe Ford, depending if you're a man or a woman. And Democrats believe Ford 57% or 54% woman or man, to 6% or 16% women to men. Not only does our culture assess its politicians inappropriately based upon these partisan politics rather than a complete investigation, it causes us to draw irrational conclusions. Listen.
If it is true, would it be okay with you if he became a justice on the Supreme Court?
As long as that's an isolated incident, yes. He was 17. He was not even an adult. And we all made mistakes at 17. I believe in a second chance.
I'd be more than okay with him being Supreme Court judge.
If the person made a mistake and they've moved on and they have been a good human being, who are we to judge?
This focus group is not only expressing a partisan viewpoint, but also a societal myth as well. There is a misconception that acquaintance rape is done because of a mistake made by a good guy. When it happens, it's not a reflection of a person's character. He's entitled to a second chance that the stranger rapist isn't entitled to. David Lisak is an expert on the psychology of rape offenders, a faculty member on the National Judicial Education Project and the American Prosecutors Research Institute, and he has served as a consultant to judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement education programs across the country. He attempts to explain this misconception that acquaintance rape is a mistake done by this nice guy who isn't a repeat offender.
And I need to address first the most common misconception about offenders and therefore also about the kind of rape that occurs on college campuses. There is a prevailing myth that a rape on a college campus, first of all, it's usually referred to as what? It's got two words, it rhymes, both one syllable.
Date rape.
Thank you, date rape, yes. I hate that word, or that two words, because what that really has come to mean is rape light. This is not real rape, it's not that serious stuff, you know, the guy in a ski mask with the knife and so forth. The victims of that kind of rape, well, they're really harmed. You know, we know that. And that guy, he's a real criminal, right? And we sentence those guys, if we catch them, we sentence them to some serious time in the state penitentiary. Now, date rape, that stuff that happens on college campuses, that's a different story. People think, first of all, that the victims of so-called date rape are not as seriously harmed. I can tell you we've got about 25 years of research that completely contradicts that. But nevertheless, that's out there, that's the myth. And the part of that is that the so-called date rapist is not a serious criminal. He's well, you know, he was probably drunk, right? And so was she. There was miscommunication, all right? Here's that whole thing around consent. You know, it's like they didn't really quite understand consent, or they weren't taught really about consent. She didn't, you know, wasn't maybe as clear. There was miscommunication. Kind of like an accident of circumstance, a bad confluence of alcohol, miscommunication, you know, maybe a little bit of lack of respect, things like that we could all teach. You know, we could teach this somehow, teach them out of this. And of course, he'd never do it again because it was this confluence of bad circumstances that led to this, because basically he's a nice guy. So what I'm going to show you now are some data that just flatly contradicts this mythology about what's going on college campuses. We looked at 1,882 men. In that sample, there were 120 rapists. That you don't ask directly, have you ever been raped, or have you ever committed a rape? What you do is you construct very behaviorally explicit questions that define very clearly the act, the behavior, but you don't use words like abuse or assault or rape or anything that would cue a person to the fact that this is a criminal act that you're defining. This study was published in 2002. 63% of those rapists were serial offenders. And the threshold for being labeled a serial offender was 3, minimum of 3 rapes committed. That's the same as the FBI uses. So if we look at that sample as a pie chart here, you can see that the vast majority of men, 1,762 out of 1,882, don't rape. Now, that yellow slice, those are 44 men out of this entire sample who'd committed a single act of rape that hadn't been repeated. And what we know about them is that they are very different than that red slice. They don't have the same background of offending, and they don't have quite the same level of characteristics that I'll mention when we talk about the serial rapists. What we do know is that it is, again, circumstances, situational determinants were much more important in the fact that they committed this rape. The red slice, 76 men responsible for 439 rapes and a handful of attempted rapes. These are the serial rapists. Again, now we're down to a very small number, 76 out of 1,882. But this is what you find if you do any kind of research on interpersonal crime anywhere in the world. The vast majority of it is perpetrated by a very small percentage of the community, and they're individuals, by and large men, who are serially offending.
He draws the conclusion that most men who rape are deliberate, repeat offenders. 1 in 3 were crimes of opportunity and not likely to offend. The result of his study doesn't preclude the possibility that a mistake with consent can occur, but scientifically, it's just the unusual exception, not the rule. The facts presented in Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation proceeding don't involve any type of mistake. You either believe the judge that he didn't do it, or you don't. It doesn't involve any miscommunication. The unfortunate thing is that society often doesn't consider the reality of scientific research or the facts in forming its opinion about sexual assault allegations. Sadly, it appears that opinions are formed from myth and strong partisan political allegiances. This has been part 2 of a 3-part series about the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. In this episode, we discussed the fact that partisan politics and myth completely drowns out the science and reality of acquaintance rape. In the next episode, we will discuss the fear experienced by acquaintance rape victims and the damage caused by acquaintance rape. If you like this episode, please subscribe to PA Voter Information Network, forward this link to all the people on your contact list and social media friends. Please click the like button and leave a comment. I'm very interested to interact with you and learn your thoughts. Signing off, tune in next time. Bye for now.